everybody aware. Thanks everybody for joining the June edition of the Cloud Office Hours. The primary topic this week is fleet management and Internet of Things. My name's Bob Ballard. I'm Principal Cloud Strategist. We also have Michael Dunmeyer, Senior CRM Engineer, and then our usual and well-received updates from Jeff Fowler, our Senior Security Strategist. So we're going to get into fleet management, Internet of Things, talk about our security topics as well, and then have open mic towards the end. You already own it team, myself, Jerry Martin, Aaron Ward, George Scott. We're the Cloud Strategist team. Look for our tweets and blogs and LinkedIn posts as well. We're also supported by Mary Tucker, who keeps all of us in line and makes sure all the communications go out properly, etc. And of course, it's all due to the vision of our Vice President, Steve Winter. I did want to take one second to sort of point out something new we added to the newsletter. Everyone on the call receives the monthly You Already Own It newsletter. Typically it's tied in. The main featured topic is the same topic we're going to present on, but there's a lot of other useful information in the newsletter. One new thing we started adding is what we're calling the Cloud Service Packs. It's an aggregation of sort of the top 5 articles that happened this month that we think our customers need to be seeing. We're going to, over time, look at other ways of delivering them as well, but for now, we're going to highlight the top 5 articles, get them into the newsletter, and then stay tuned for potentially more delivery options as well, like maybe RSS feeds and things like that coming soon. Don't forget, of course, that if you have any questions or concerns about decisions you need to make or technology questions that you might have, feel free to reach out to the You Already Own It at go-planet.com. That will sort of hit the team of folks that I mentioned, the cloud strategists, will take care of your questions, get back to you within 48 hours, at least with we're still looking into it, and get the right subject matter expertise to answer your concerns, hop on a call, whatever we need to do. Part of the benefit of being a You Already Own It customer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Dunmeyer to start talking about Internet of Things and fleet management. Go ahead, Michael.
I'm getting my screen shared out now. Everybody can see that?
It's coming.
Not yet. There.
Yep.
All right, you can see it now? Okay, great. So we have today about 8 slides and then a demo that we're going to go through here. I expect this probably be about a half hour, maybe 35, 40 minutes. But today's demo, we're going to talk about IoT, so the Internet of Things, specifically around the GEOTAB Go device and the Planet Technologies solutions for Dynamics 365. We have a solution for the GEOTAB Go devices and a solution for fleet management. These are 2 separate solutions that we offer. And they were developed side by side with each other so that they can integrate easily with each other. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through this. But they are also separate solutions. So if you find that you're interested in one and not the other, you can acquire and deploy one solution without the other. But there is a tie that we already have built to tie the 2 together. And the reason for that is just, maximum flexibility, and it's used as a development platform. For anybody who's not familiar with Dynamics 365, it's an offering from Microsoft. Dynamics 365 is a cloud-hosted platform, has sales, marketing, and service right out of the box, and it can be used as a rapid application development platform. And you'll see as we go through this, that's what we're leveraging it as an application development platform for these solutions. So the Internet of Things, I'm not going to read all this. You can read over it if you want. But for those of you who don't know what IoT is or what Internet of Things is, it's basically a network of devices that exchange data and are integrated. So if you have something like a smartphone, most people have those, or if you have a smart TV, at home, maybe one of the newer TVs that you can just turn it on and go right to Netflix and start watching a video without having to have it plugged into cable on the wall. It's just connected directly to the internet and streaming. That is an IoT device. Many other IoT devices, some things are as simple as pressing a button whenever you run out of a product and it automatically orders it for you from Amazon, to some of the things that we're going to talk about here that interact with a vehicle to give integration into the fleet management system. And it looks here over 31% increase in IoT devices year by year, with almost 8.5 billion devices in use last year, expanding to about 30 billion devices in the next couple years. A lot of devices out there. So the item in particular we're going to be talking today about is the GEOTAB Go device. So GEOTAB is the company who makes this. The Go device is the name of the device, and it is a device that plugs into the diagnostic port on your vehicle. It's the OBD2 port, which we'll talk about here a little bit as well. But it's very small, compact. It has a very fast acquisition time, so we're talking like seconds to a couple seconds to gather this information. It also has LTE connectivity, so it's real time or near real time that this data is being delivered back into your back-end system, and it also will collect data offline. So if you're in an area where there's no cell service, or you're in a tunnel or a parking garage or something along those lines, it'll continue to collect data, and then whenever that connection is restored, it'll just upload all that data at one time. It also has what's called high quality recording. So that records things, in the case of this unit, records things such as the health of the vehicle. So faults and check engine lights. I'm sure everybody's seen a check engine light on a dashboard at one point or another. And then there may be also other faults that don't trigger a check engine light, and it records those as well. It also records the VIN, so the vehicle identification number. That's specific to each individual vehicle, and that's basically uses a unique identifier to send that information back into the GEOTAB system and the fleet system, so that it knows which vehicle this is recording from. It also records things like the odometer reading and whether your seatbelt is attached, and pretty much everything that gets monitored inside a vehicle can be sent back through this device. So this is what it actually looks like when it's plugged into the OBD2 port that's generally located under the steering wheel on the driver's side of the vehicle. The OBD2 standard, this was introduced in 1991 and was designed for cars and light duty vehicles. Pretty much any vehicle, car or light duty vehicle that's been manufactured since 1996 will have an OBD2 port on it. And then over the years between 96 and 2005, it expanded to things like motorcycles and agricultural vehicles and medium and heavy duty vehicles. At this point, as of 2005, most vehicles that are manufactured in the United States have this OBD2 port on it. So if you've ever gotten a check engine light and you've taken your car into the shop, they have a sensor that they plug into this, and it reads a code, and then they can find out what the fault is in your car, as opposed to just the check engine light on the dash. So this just plugs directly into there. It's easy plug and play. It's literally you take it out of the box and you plug it in to this port. Whenever you plug it into the port, it automatically generates the vehicle record as well in the system. So easy setup. And then based on the different types of, without getting too technical, based on the different types of bus systems in the vehicles, there are adapters available. There's what's called CAN bus, which is an overall standard. If you think about it, the CAN bus is like the telephone. It's your means of communication, and the OBD2 is the communication or the conversation you're having on that phone. So there are different types of ports if you don't have OBD2, which you probably do for most of your vehicles. There are adapters available from GEOTAB to be able to still plug that into other types of ports. So some of the GEOTAB features, we did talk about some of these, but the easy plug and play we talked about. Accident detection is one of the very important pieces on here. So it will detect abrupt G-forces. So if there is an abrupt G-force detected, as in a car wreck, a car accident, that does trigger an event with the unit. So that could then also within the system trigger an event to automatically alert the fleet administrator to let them know that there's a vehicle accident. So they, this could be set up that they would actually know there's an accident before they actually even get a phone call to let them know that there's an accident. We talked about the LTE connectivity that'll collect data offline and send it whenever you reconnect. The engine diagnostics, we did talk about some of that, like the check engine lights and things of that nature. The near real-time vehicle data, that's because it's coming back and forth across the internet. This is an IoT device. The built-in accelerometer, that's basically how the accident detection would work. The accelerometer detects forward and backward and left and right movement, so it can detect things like cornering and acceleration, or hard cornering and hard acceleration, or hard braking, things of that nature. And then it also has audible alerts. So one example would be if your seatbelt isn't connected and the vehicle's started and it's in motion and the seatbelt's still not connected, it can fire off an alarm or a beep and let the driver know that they need to buckle their seatbelt. And that can be configured on the GEOTAB side to continue to do that as a nag to let them know that they need to get that seatbelt on. The offline data connection that goes along with the LTE connectivity that we talked about. And then device extendability. So these devices can be extended beyond just what is triggered through, through the OBD2 port. So if you think about some other types of vehicles that have additional functionality other than your typical sedan or coupe that you would drive, maybe something like a refrigeration truck, a food delivery truck, or an emergency vehicle, or something like that may have other circuits and other sensors and things in the vehicle. So like the refrigeration truck, this can be extended to interact with those refrigeration units if it drops below a certain range, or if it's a heated food truck, if it goes below or above a certain range, that it can also trigger events. One of the other ones that you probably do have on your vehicles right now is your tire pressure monitor sensors, or TPMS. This can be extended to tie into that also. So if your car, if your car determines that one of your tires is a little low on air and it triggers a sensor, this can be extended to be able to interact with that as well. The secure authentication, just says secure there, but that basically what we're saying on that is secure authentication, and the way that works with the solutions that we've built is that it actually generates a secure token between the GeoDevice unit and the GeoDevice software. That's good for 2 weeks. We actually have a job that resets that every week, but that's completely configurable on your side, so you can extend that up to 2 weeks or less than 1 week if you want. And then as far as integration with other systems, GeoTAB has its own SDK and APIs, and those APIs are REST-based, so it works very well for integrating with Dynamic CRM that we're going to show here today. And then it's 100% cloud-based. So this, I'm just going to skim over the screen a little bit because this will be part of the demo, but with the GeoTAB solution that Planet built, remember I said there was actually 2 solutions that we built. The one is a GeoTAB solution, and the other one is the fleet management solution. Within a GeoTAB solution, we've also built a couple dashboards. There's a dashboard for the exceptions. So that'd be things like your check engine light and engine faults and things of that nature, and then vehicle management. There are some mapping functions that are in there as well for trips, including exceptions, and location tracking. And like I said, I'm not going to go into each of these. It'll be part of the demo. There are a couple workflows that were built also. One of the workflows, and we'll show this during the demo specifically, is refill notifications. So you take the vehicle to the fueling station, you fill it up with gas. Whenever you turn your car back on, the OBD2 detects that, and it tries to determine how much gas was put in, and it creates an event on that. Well, in our fleet management system, we already had a field in there to be able to track fueling events, but this GEOTAB will actually do the work for you and calculate that. The workflow then generates an email to the person who filled it up, so that, or the owner of the vehicle, so that they can actually verify that that was the amount, and they can put in the cost per gallon, and then that's real time back into the back end system as well. And then you can start to do trending and mile per gallon, and see which vehicles may be having problems that need an oil change or an air filter change or things of that nature. There's also Microsoft Flow integration. We'll talk about that a little bit as well, but basically where that comes into play is the lowest amount of time for a Dynamics 365 workflow is 1 hour without creating reoccurring workflows that call themselves. So Microsoft Flow, you can get down to the minute. So there are further ways that those workflows could be extended through integration with Microsoft Flow. And then there's a mobile app also, which I might be able to show today, but I'm going to at least show it on the screen here for you. And that's what you would use for adding in those refueling events whenever you filled up your car. So the GEOTAB solution for Dynamics 365, the user-defined jobs. So it says user-defined. That's kind of the overall term, but in essence, this would be something that the admins of the system would be set up. You wouldn't really have people who are just driving the vehicles creating their own jobs in the system. But what this means is that once you acquire this, you don't have to come back to Planet and say, hey, can you create me a new job? You'll be able to maintain this yourself. So these jobs you can set up with your own frequency and filters. As I said, right out of the box with Dynamics 365, 60 minutes or 1 hour is the minimum, but using Microsoft Flow, you can take these down to every minute that you can have jobs run. And then the authentication for the stored credentials is one of the jobs that's already built, that we've already built included with this as well. We have virtual entities that we're using for this, and if you're very, very new to Dynamics 365, just within one of the last few releases. So if you're not familiar with Dynamics 365 or you haven't been keeping track of the most recent changes, they have now what's called virtual entities. And the biggest thing here for us is this data is actually being stored by GEOTAB. And if we brought all that into your Dynamics 365 environment, it's extra data you probably don't really need, except for like real time whenever you're reporting off of it, and it can bloat the database, which results in extra costs. So virtual entities are basically a way of building out the structure inside of Dynamics 365 and querying that data from the actual data source in real time. And then it's from the Dynamics 365 side, the data appears like it's just already sitting there in the system. So we're using that to do two things. One is to offload the authentication of this out of Dynamics 365, and the second part of it is to be able to conserve space for you within your environment. So the fleet management solution, you may have seen this one before, the GEOTAB solution that we built. It's fairly new, within late 2017 up until current. Fleet management, we built this probably 4 or 5 plus years ago, and have been continuing to add to it. So fleet management is it's basically all of your vehicles in your fleet. It can be something like a county that may have different agencies like police and sheriff and groundskeeping that may have very different types of vehicles, or it can be a single agency that you just have 4 or 5 vehicles that you're managing for people to be able to use if they have to travel for training or an off-site visit. It gives you the ability to have a car that's assigned to somebody, or a pool car. And then this also does routing. Isochrone, I'm going to show that allows you to see how far you can drive from a given point, and then the different entities that are tracked in the system to track those vehicles. And then just recently, we've added the vehicle depreciation, which is tied directly into Kelley Blue Book. So last slide, and then we'll get on to the demo. This basically just shows between the two between the two systems what each system is responsible for doing. So the GEOTAB system is responsible for collecting the data, for determining the location and the speed and the status and the diagnostics of the vehicles, and defining the roles, like the harsh braking and whether they're speeding, if their seatbelt's connected. It determines and maintains all that data. And then the Dynamics 365 system consumes that data, runs the roles, causes the triggers for the workflows, shows you the information on the screen, and then it actually integrates the data into the maps and the workflows, and eventually reports or trending maps and things like that. So let's get on with the demo. That's the fun part.
Hey, Michael, while you're loading up
Yes.
your demo screen, I just had a couple of comments. So,
sure.
so obviously, we're showing you a very specific solution for, our pretty popular fleet management tool that's built on CRM and how Internet of Things connects to it. But I also challenge everybody on the call to think about the other thing this shows, however, is that CRM solutions, case management solutions, any of these other things that we've built for many of our customers, 311, others, can use a similar sort of infrastructure to collect data from these Internet of Things objects and incorporate them into the system. So, your wheels can, while we're watching the demo, your wheels can also be turning on various other kinds of devices, monitoring solutions, all those kinds of things that can also be sending data back into CRM. So just something to keep in mind.
Right. Yeah, and I think a good example of that is we have an asset management solution also, which, vehicles are basically just assets. They're a very large and specific type of asset. But, if it's highway maintenance and they have those, the big lighted signs that are set out and tells you, like construction X 5 miles or be prepared for frequent stops or whatever, those nowadays have internet connectivity, so somebody doesn't actually have to drive out there and program it to say what actually is on the screen. They can program it from remotely, so that is effectively an asset. Has nothing to do with the vehicle, even though it has tires on it to get it out there. So that's, it's completely different system, completely different use, and yet it's still the exact same thing, and we're tracking it inside of Dynamics 365. Okay, so to start the demo, we have two different areas. So again, if you're familiar with Dynamics 365, you're probably familiar with this navigation structure. If not, basically all your different applications or line of business applications would be listed in a separate area, and then all of your options within it are underneath it. So we have the fleet management system and the GEOTAB system. These are the two different solutions that I talked about that we offer. And for this demo, they are both they're both installed and they're integrated through the connection here. So as GEOTAB is collecting that information, it's actually getting attached to the fleet vehicle that's associated with it. So I'm going to run through some of these. They're kind of like data maintenance entities. I'm going to run through them fairly quickly just so you understand how this works in the background, and then we'll get moved on to the flash and the sizzle where all the fun actually happens in the system. So in the background, this is your roles entity, and this is where you set up all of your different roles. So you can have a speeding role, hard acceleration role, harsh braking role, and inside of each one of these, it's just a matter of what those parameters are. So the roles that were actually set up, your speeding, as we get into this, you'll see we actually have two of these GEOTAB devices in two of our employees' cars that they've been collecting data here for the demos, and the speeding threshold is set at 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, and we did that intentionally to generate a lot of these. So it's not like they're out speeding every day, but if you go over by 1 mile an hour on the settings that we have, it'll actually trigger this. That can be set up at whatever you want. You could trigger that at 5 miles an hour or whatever you want. But you can see on this custom speeding, then it shows a list of every time that this specific device registered a speeding offense, we'll say, or a speeding exception. You can see when it, from active when and to, and the distance and the maximum speed for that road, and the duration of how long the speeding occurred. So, these are the types of entities. There's nothing really glamorous about that entity, but that's what's actually sitting behind the scenes, actually doing the work for us. The next one is diagnostics, and it's very similar to that. So this is the types of faults that might get generated from the Geo device, and it automatically generates these or some of these for you. So say for example this one is camshaft position. I think we'll see this later in the demo. This is one that one of the vehicles keeps triggering this. This is how it actually knows what that diagnostic code is. Moving back into this is where your different jobs are at. So these are the jobs that you would set up, and it shows you a list of all the jobs as they run, if they were successful or not. And again, each one of these records, you can open them up and look inside the jobs. This is more on the IT side of setting this system up. Once that's set up, a lot of that just continues to maintain itself. And there's also a configuration entity. Which one am I looking here for next? The engine faults. This is a list of all the engine faults and then per vehicle. So if you start to look at this, we can blow up one of these charts that's associated with this, and we'll see it on the dashboard. But just looking at this, I can see there are a total of 167 engine faults that we've generated, and 149 of them was from one vehicle. If I'm the fleet manager, I'm probably starting to get concerned about that vehicle, right? So I can start doing trending on this, taking a look at it, doing some preventative maintenance, finding out why this thing is triggering all these events. If we didn't have this information, it would just be up to the driver to say, hey, there was a light lit up on the dashboard and I don't know what's wrong with the car. But I can see from looking through this, the different types of faults that are coming in. And again, this is pretty much real time. Both of these vehicles are parked right now because we're working. But if they were out driving around, my thought is this one may be we may actually see it generate one of these faults and pop up here during the demo. So actually starting to get into the meat and potato of this demo and how this all works. So this is your trip. So you can see in these different trips that the vehicles have taken. We start to see some of the cool stuff that we want to look at here. So here is the trip that this vehicle took. You can see when it started, when it ended, starting latitude and longitude, and the ending. There's a lot of information that gets collected for this, and then it's broken down into the actual route. Now we've developed this over what the GEOTAB mapping actually looks like. If anybody's actually seen that, the routes for GEOTAB are red, and then anywhere where you're speeding is red. So it makes it very difficult to discern those two colors. They're very close colors. So we've changed this a little bit to make it easier to see. And just looking at this, I'll zoom it in here a little bit so you can see there are some different colors and there are some different pinpoints. So the colors basically is saying this is speeding. So we've exceeded speeding at some point in this path. And you can click on it and you can see the maximum speed through that area was 30 miles an hour, and we've actually exceeded it by 4 miles an hour at one point to 34 miles an hour. Also here you can see this one has a harsh cornering. So if we look in here, you can see there's actually a bit of a bend in the road. Somebody's probably driving a little faster than the speed limit through that area. And you can start to build out these trips and track the trips and determine which drivers are driving safely, which drivers are speeding or driving aggressively. That does start to cut down on fuel economy, and tires don't last as long, and all of the things that cause vehicle maintenance to become more expensive because a lot of these things that are lit up on the screen. The next one is the fuel event, and I talked about this a little bit earlier. The fuel event ties into the fuel and mileage entity that we already have in fleet management solution. And so this is basically when you go to a fueling station, and if you don't have one of these Geo devices, you go to a fueling station and you put fuel in the car, and then you get a piece of paper in the form of a receipt that says you put this much fuel in, it cost this much, and this was the date. And then you still have to go back to your desk and type that in. With the Geo device, it automatically puts in what it thinks the volume added was, and then it generates an email to whoever owns the vehicle. So right now we're looking, Derek actually owns this vehicle. It's actually his car. So whenever this gets filled up, it's going to generate an email to send to him to let him know that he can go ahead and finish filling in that information. So this is what the email would look like. Again, this is completely configurable. It's just some text and a link here, but this could be, built out with your agency logo and, instructions and anything else you need to do. But the point here is that it has a link in it that the person who filled out the vehicle can click on, and it will take them directly to this record. So on the mobile device, it'll open up the mobile app and take them to this form. Since I'm not really presenting my phone screen right now, I can't show you that, but it would look just like this, just on a smaller screen. This is the form inside of Dynamics 365, and at this point, they could put in here, the fueling station if they want to track that, and possibly the cost per gallon, and then that'll start to calculate things for you over the course of time, like miles per gallon and fuel usage. So that is pretty much. Oh no, I don't want to say that. That is pretty much the. Sorry. Oh, I'm on a different tab. Sorry about that. That's pretty much the GEOTAB solution and instant interaction. So I'm going to flip over to the fleet management portion of this and show you some of this stuff now. So the dashboards, there's a couple dashboards that we've included. I'm going to show you a couple of them. One I'm going to save till the end, till after we show you fleets. That makes more sense what we're showing in a dashboard. So there are several different dashboards in here. Most of these that say Go Device and a Fleet and Isochrone, those are the ones that are specifically for the solutions that we're showing. We have a couple other solutions installed in here. That's why you're seeing some of these other dashboards. But this one in particular is the All Devices. So this, it's basically a map, right? So I'm the fleet admin, and I want to take a look and see where all my different devices are at. I can zoom in on any one of these and see where this vehicle is at any point. And I can turn on tracking also from this point. So if the vehicle is actually in motion, right now it's not. Again, we're working, so the vehicles aren't moving. But if they were actually moving, it would show you the route. I believe that updates every 10 seconds, and it'll actually show the, like a pointer of the direction that the vehicle is actually moving. And then we have the fault dashboard, engine fault dashboard. And this shows more along the lines of faults within a car. We already saw this dashboard whenever we were in the other entity, and I popped it open on the right screen. This is the exact same chart. It's just showing it right here on the screen or inside the dashboard. Again, if you're familiar with Dynamics 365, you know that you can start to drill down into these specific areas of a chart and get more information about them. So I'm looking at just this one unit, and I can start to see here by date the different occurrences that would allow you to drill down in if you're starting to see maybe speeding, and you want to look at overall speeding and then drill down into the specific vehicle, and then in that vehicle you wanted to drill down into specific days to find out when that speeding occurred. It's the same data that you're actually looking at in that data grid that we saw previously, but it's in visual chart form, and you can drill down into it. There's an exception dashboard here. An exception chart within the dashboard as well, so you can see this vehicle in particular has two different exceptions that it's throwing, and with a total of about 100. It looks like it's about half and half, but if you just mouse over there, you can see the different ones that are there, and again, you can drill down into any one of those. There's also the Go Device Diagnostics. Essentially, this is something you would probably filter out in real life. This is just the in progress, so it's telling you, you've just started a vehicle recently, or you've lost connection recently, and you need to drive a little bit longer. So the rest of this pie, other than the orange, is really the the data that you would be interested in. That could be easily filtered out through the view. So, just a lot of different information. It can be shown on a single pane of glass without having to click through the system to find it. There's a couple other dashboards that we include with this. One of them is the exception dashboard. So here you can see overall, I believe this is all time, but this could be filtered. You could say just within the last month or last year, or last week, last quarter, all of the different exceptions. So it looks like about half of these are speeding on the exceptions. And then you can see here by vehicle as well. This one in particular shows by day. So I think that one's a little bit more difficult to read, but these charts can be set up any way, pie chart, horizontal or vertical bar chart, or these area dot charts. There's one other one that I want to show you, one other dashboard, but I'm going to wait until we talk about fleet, and I'm going to come back to it so you understand what we're really looking at. So in fleet management, again, if you've seen our fleet management demo, some of this may be familiar to you, but if you have, then you're going to see the new pieces we added in here for the integration into GEOTAB. So with the GEOTAB solution integration, you now have this Go device information block on the vehicle record. This pulls in the information directly from the GEOTAB solution. So if you're used to updating your mileage manually, and you're used to updating your VIN manually, you don't have to do that anymore. It'll automatically do it for you based on the integration with the GEOTAB solution. It's also smart enough here to know if it's driving or not. So if the vehicle is in motion, it'll say yes. If it's parked, it'll say no. And then if we scroll down, again, most of this is what you may already be familiar with, but there's some new sections in here now called truck and route properties, and then there's the Kelly Blue Book piece at the bottom, which I'll talk about. So the truck and route properties, this is mostly for large, like heavy-duty vehicles. If you think about agricultural vehicles or semis, some sort of a vehicle that may be pulling another part of a vehicle, or a tractor and trailer, oversized loads, wide loads, exceeding weight, maybe it's too high, maybe it's too low, and the ground clearance won't allow it to go over a train track, something of that nature. So you can set that up in here, and it basically profiles this vehicle so that whenever you're planning out your routes, it doesn't actually cause you to go down a road that vehicle shouldn't go down. So the routes are, we skipped over that, but the routes are, here they are. In the routes, you can have a separate route for each vehicle, and you can have the same vehicle listed twice, especially if it's if it's a rig and it has different types of trailers. Maybe one trailer sits lower than another, so it may have a ground clearance with one trailer, and it doesn't have the same ground clearance with another trailer. So this does allow you to include multiple routes in here for these vehicles. And I apologize, I clicked on routes, and instead of opening the route vehicle, I clicked on the vehicle itself. So this is the actual route. This one in particular, it's just from a point to point. So this is basically from one location to our Harrisburg office. And you can see where it's trying to navigate what that route would be for the vehicle. And that's because it's avoiding highways and tolls. So there is a toll road here. If I look at one of these other vehicles, I think this is truck 2. Truck 1. Yeah, here. So truck 1 has, it doesn't have nearly the same restrictions on it as far as those ground clearance and height and weight restrictions. So you may not be familiar with this road, but this is a road. I take part of this to get to our office as well. It's a lot of back country road, twisty road, not really suited well for a tractor and trailer in a lot of areas. So we have most of those restrictions shut off for this truck vehicle, truck 1. So it's just calculating based on the on optimized by time. This is the quickest route to get there. So if I take a look at truck number 2, and truck number 2 does actually have a restriction. This is truck 1. This is truck number 2. Give that a second to come up on the screen. You'll see that it's actually taking that vehicle out now and putting it on the highway, and then bringing it back. This is actually a turnpike, so it's almost all highway that vehicle is actually being routed. This is all just through the route. I mean, this isn't somebody sitting here actually saying what is the best route. It's doing this all directly for you because you created a route with the start address and the end address, and it's calculating that based on this vehicle record and what the restrictions are. And that'll also take into consideration things like I'm sure everybody's seen a picture of like a tall truck that gets stuck underneath a bridge because they thought they weren't that tall. It'll take into considerations things like that, like low bridges. There may be some routes that you may not be able to have hazardous materials on. That can all be calculated inside of this screen on the vehicle to profile the vehicle. And then while we're on this record, I'm going to go ahead and show you the Kelley Blue Book functionality. Again, this is very, very new. Last demo we didn't even have this in here, so it is extremely new. But it sits on the vehicle record, and the Kelley Blue Book valuation, it runs through a very similar integration point to what we did with the GEOTAB connection. So it goes out once a month and pulls the data from Kelley Blue Book value, and it stores it in a separate entity inside of CRM, and then it's associated with a vehicle. So what that allows you to do, what that means basically, is it doesn't keep overwriting a single value each time. So you start to be able to build out your history of the value of that vehicle, so you can start to look at the depreciation over a period of time. And right now we only have basically one entry in here. It's from 21st and 22nd, just from this week, but because it's so new. But if this was something that we had added in here a while ago, that every month it had been collecting this data, you'd be able to see this chart on the right side, be able to build out and depreciate over a period of time. This is very helpful. A lot of agencies, they may not base the vehicle usage or the vehicle longevity, I'll say, on the mileage or the runtime. They may base it on the value, the remaining value, regardless of how many miles or how long it is run or idled if it's like a big truck. So this information will be stored in the in the vehicle record now as well. Something very, very new. And then the last piece I wanted to show you was that last dashboard that we skipped over. I think this is really, really cool dashboard. One, to save it for last, but also so that it would actually show, that you would understand what this is that you're looking at, since we saw the pieces in GEOTAB and Fleet. So this is an isochrone map, and an isochrone map basically, in most basic terms, tells you how far you can drive from a given point, or how far you can drive from a given point, or how far you can get from a point. So with this map, you can basically click on a point. So I can see this vehicle. You couldn't really see what I was doing there, but I just clicked on that vehicle's pin. And so it starts to build out. The way we have this developed is something is completely developed on here by Planet. This isn't a fleet management solution, not part of the GEOTAB solution, although it integrates directly with it. But you can see I don't know if you'll be able to see my arrow here. There's probably a little bit of a lag, but this very first border is 10 minutes. And then there's a next border that's about an inch or so out. It's 20 minutes, and it continues 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes. So it gives you an idea of about how far you can drive in a certain period of time. This is very helpful for things like first responders. If it's a EMS or a police vehicle or fire, or maybe it's somebody, maybe it's not first responder, but maybe it's a cable company, and somebody's cable's out, and they just want to look and see which vehicle's in that area, and then they can click on it and say, oh yeah, we can be to your address within the next 20 minutes or something along those lines. And I do want to point this out. I am in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area. If you're not familiar with this stretch, the mighty Susquehanna runs right through Harrisburg, and so you can see there are many, many bridges right in Harrisburg. There's about 7 of them within about 5 miles, but then you have the stretch of about 15 miles with no bridges, and then you have the Pennsylvania Turnpike Bridge, and you can actually see how this builds out from this area. I can get the whole way out to here. Again, if you can see where my mouse is at, I can get the whole way out to here in 10 minutes from that location because there is a bridge, but I can barely even get to this area in 10 minutes. It takes me 20 minutes, even though it's closer, as the bird flies. because there's no bridge or because the closest exit to get off the bridge is way out past there. So it's not just, a bunch of circles layered over top of each other. It really does take routes into consideration. And then additionally, we did that the first time based on where our vehicle was, but maybe the customer who called in and said, I need service at my location. When can you get somebody out here? I'm just going to go ahead and fill this in if I can type. I can't type and talk at the same time. We're going to go with the address to our Pennsylvania office. You can actually see here now this adjusted. The new point is at our Harrisburg office, and you can see it adjusted for the new map area. So that is pretty much everything I had to show today. Bob, did you want to open for questions or wait till questions at the end?
Let's get Jeff's security briefing in, and then we'll open up to questions.
All right.
So let's go back to. Oops. Go back to our presentation here. All right. All right. Let's go ahead. Let me get you to your spot there, Jeff. All righty. Take it away, Jeff.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Hopefully everyone can see the screen now. So last month I talked about breaches and how you can prevent them in your enterprise. This week I want to talk about some of the new things that are coming along within Microsoft and their security services and whatnot across the board. Now, let's see here. Let me flip back to presenter again here. All right, so one of the first things that Microsoft is doing here real soon, it's currently in public preview. What they're doing is they're creating a new baseline policy for all organizations that will require multi-factor authentication for all Azure AD admin accounts. And this will apply to lots of different types of accounts. This will include global admins, the bulk blanket admin account you have for Office 365 and your tenant. Also applies to your SharePoint administrators, your Exchange admins, conditional access admins, as well as security admins. Now, and this will be by default a new security baseline policy in Azure AD for all of those roles by default here real soon. What you can do right now, though, you can actually opt into it and use the policy immediately as it shows there on the screen on the right. And they are encouraging everyone to adopt this as quickly as possible. Now, you can also decide if you don't want to adopt that level of a security posture for your organization, which we definitely recommend doing. You can opt out of it if you have some kind of extenuating circumstances, but really, we definitely recommend adopting this for your organization and your tenant in Azure AD just to help protect your organization as much as possible from the admin accounts. Really, the keys of the kingdom are these accounts. Now, if you do have a mitigating scenario where, let's say, you have a third-party integration service that requires one of these levels of admin, for whatever reason, it doesn't give you granular controls or access over those accounts. You can't just have specific role, very specific rights applied. You need a global admin or you need an Exchange admin for whatever reason. You can exclude users or groups, as you see them in the bottom right-hand corner. So that might be a way for you to apply the policy, but have that one or two exceptions in place, excluded, so that you can have the blanket policy while still having control over who is the specific exception in your organization, either group or user perspective. And this will be available to everyone who has Azure AD. So if you have Office 365, you have access to this here real soon. All right. So the next one I want to mention is the new Azure AD Smart Lockout capability. And this will also be available for all Azure AD customers. So what this does is it basically leverages machine learning and some of the AI capabilities to understand where users typically work from, and if so, by having that learning in place, this is very similar to the advanced threat analytics for on-prem for your Windows machines. as well as some of the conditional access policies you might have in place. So this kind of puts it out there for you automatically, built into Azure AD by default for all users, regardless if you have ATA on-prem or if you have conditional access in place. So this really applies to like impossible travel scenarios where the users typically log in from their office every day. Maybe they log in from their home IP every once in a while. But if suddenly they log in from the other side of the world, Azure AD will automatically block those authentications by saying, "Hey, this is impossible travel. There's no way Bob just traveled from his house in Maryland to somewhere in Australia in the past 20 minutes. It's impossible. Sorry, Bob. That's not likely unless you've got a transporter in place." So the great thing is, instead of just saying blanket stop Bob from logging in, this will actually allow users to keep logging and do what they need to do to get their work done, while blocking the extraneous, strange, impossible travel scenarios that occur here and there where people are trying to log in from somewhere else. Another great feature of this is you can actually add in your own passwords. So, for example, if you have, and I'll mention something in a moment here with regards to the Azure AD password protection. It really goes in hand with that. But you can actually, if you have org-specific passwords that you want to have, blocked or included or whatever else, you can actually add your own whitelist, blacklist to this as well. The next one is the Azure AD password protection, and much like what I mentioned earlier, we could add your own passwords in with the Azure AD Smart Lockout. This is a preloaded dictionary of common passwords that's commonly seen in breaches around the world that Microsoft has seen. Includes about 500 different common passwords people use, such as password 123 or silly things like that no one actually really uses, hopefully. It does include 1 million variants on those 500 passwords based on common substitutions. So if you're using a capital S or lowercase s or a $sign for the S versus a plus sign for a T or an exclamation mark for an I or a 1 or a 0 for an O, it includes all of those variants to make sure that if people just bypass something with a very simple password thing, it stops that from occurring. So that helps you from both the user's perspective as well as from external people as well. And this does allow you to actually manage both Azure AD as well as on-premise Active Directory environments through this one center console. So you have a single pane of glass for your Azure AD password protection. And this feature is available with Azure AD Premium 1. So if you're running EMS, for example, even at the E3 tier, you have access to this today, or this will be very soon. Now, all three of these, the multi-factor authentication for all Azure AD accounts, the Azure AD Smart Lockout, and the Azure AD Premium Password Protection are all in public preview and likely coming to your tenant here in the next couple of months, most likely. If you are in a government tenant, there may be some lag time if you're in GCC, but for all standard users as well as Azure AD, this will be available here real soon for you. So I just want to give a brief update with regards to what's new from Microsoft and security realm. There are some other things happening as well that we'll announce likely at the next one that are very exciting, especially with Inspire coming out a month from now out in Las Vegas. But there's definitely more things to come here real soon we'll tell you about. So Bob, back to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Just let me take over as presenter again. And we're wrapping up. This is our portion where we say, this month's session is brought to you by Azure Advantage here at Planet Technologies. It's the ability, many of our customers, as they're moving to Azure, may or may not have the facilities to really handle the ongoing care and feeding, at least early on in their move. Or you may have specific departmental applications that you want to treat like software as a service, but they have to be run more like infrastructure as a service. By looking to Planet to take over those things, you can sort of deliver those. You get 24/7 phone support, email support, data recovery, performance issues and optimization for costs, all of those things as well. And with that, we come to the end. Are there any questions out there in the audience? Going once, going twice. Okay, I guess we'll call that a wrap. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you next month.